French sauces are a beautiful thing. Rich, delicious, and absolutely full of butter. They may not be a weekday cooking experience, but once in a while, there's nothing like a classic French sauce. So today we're making a delicious brown butter lemon sauce with capers and croutons that tastes amazing on fish. A classic French chicken sauce turned into a creamy and delicious lemon pepper sauce, and a literal 3-star Bernaise. As someone who spent years cooking for a 3 Michelin star French chef who had all but banned butter-rich sauces like these in the kitchen, I can tell you that French sauce making can easily be light and not completely terrifying for someone like me who does like to spend at least the first few months of every year tracking calories and macros to stay on track. But today is about the classics, so get out your butter, folks, and get ready for some creamy, waist-expanding deliciousness. First up is the classic brown butter with lemon and parsley for fish, but we're doing the peak version that adds capers and croutons for the amazing briny flavors and crunchy textures. This is a great sauce for fish, and it takes less than a minute to cook, which is always a plus. But because it happens so fast, it's important to gather your ingredients before you start. If you've ever heard the term mise en place, this is it. There could not be a more simple and delicious version of the flavor triad of salt, acid, and fat. So feel free to skip the gram weights I'm about to share and go by taste. Gather 75 grams of unsalted butter, optionally 30 grams of heavy cream, more on that in a minute, 5 grams of salt, 30 grams of lemon juice, 40 grams of capers, 10 grams of chopped parsley, and a nice pile of croutons, which you can buy already made or dice up some bread, melt olive oil and butter in a skillet, and cook the croutons while you're stirring for a few minutes until they're crispy and golden brown. Traditionally, this is eaten on whitefish like trout that's been seasoned, dredged in flour, shaken off, and fried, but take it from me, it is delicious on any style, seasoning, or type of fish. Add the butter to your pan on medium heat along with the cream if you're using it. When you brown butter, it separates into the milk fat and the milk solids, and then the solids turn into this delicious, aromatic, nutty brown. But if you add cream into the butter while it's melting, when it eventually separates, you end up with a lot more milk solids to brown, which leads to a much deeper and more delicious sauce. Cook this over medium heat while shaking the pan until you see the color start to turn this deep golden brown, and then immediately add the lemon juice, which will stop the cooking. This is why it's important to gather everything first, because if you don't add the lemon juice at the right color, the sauce will carry over to burnt. Turn the heat off and add the capers, the salt, parsley, and the croutons. Stir this up and spoon it over your fish. Next up is the chicken sauce, which is a heavily tweaked version of a classic French mother sauce called Veloute. Start by melting 50 grams of unsalted butter, and once it's foaming, add 50 grams of all-purpose flour. Cook this for a few minutes over a medium-low heat, and then add 900 milliliters of chicken stock, or even better, use homemade. I built this recipe around a 32-ounce box of store-bought stock, but personally, I usually have chicken broth in my freezer, so I used that. If you add all of the stock at once, it will possibly get clumpy, so I like to turn the heat off and then add a nice big pour of the stock, get in there with a whisk to break everything up, and then pour the rest of the stock in and whisk it up again. Bring this up to a light simmer and let it go for about 20 minutes while you're skimming the foam off the top. Once it's cooked, season to taste with salt. This will look a lot like a simple pale gravy, and that's exactly what it is. But the beautiful thing about French sauces is that they're designed to be customized. This is a mother sauce from which you can add many ingredients to create many new sauces. But in my case, I'm bombing it with lemon zest, chopped parsley and tarragon, lots of coarse black pepper, and lemon juice. Eat this with whatever chicken you want, but I had it with my favorite cornstarch dusted pan-seared chicken breast. Get a saute pan nice and hot with a good pour of grapeseed oil. Season the chicken with salt and pat the skin dry, and then dust it with cornstarch. Turn the burner off and then gently lay the chicken in skin side down. Turn the heat down to medium, keep cooking until the skin gets a nice golden brown, and then put it into a 450-degree oven until the internal temperature reaches 155 degrees. Take it out and add butter with some thyme and crushed garlic cloves and baste it over low heat for a few minutes. The skin is incredibly light and crunchy, almost like a cracker. Last up is the classic steakhouse favorite, Bernaise. There are basically two ways to make this sauce, one involving hot, clarified butter, and the other cold whole butter. Today, we're going with my favorite, which is the cold butter method. It's both much easier to make and also it tastes a lot better because of all of the milk solids that would be removed if you used clarified butter. This is based off a gram-weighted recipe, but the volume ratio is super easy to remember. 1 cup of shallots, which I peeled, split in half, and sliced into half rounds. 1 cup of chopped tarragon, which is basically a full bunch with a few sprigs taken out to finish the sauce with, and then the stems and everything are chopped up. 1 tablespoon of very coarsely ground black pepper, and 1 cup of champagne vinegar, which is a delicious style of white wine vinegar, but feel free to just use the standard white wine vinegar. Add the shallots, the tarragon, the pepper, and the vinegar into a pot, then boil it for 3 or 4 minutes until the liquid is reduced by about half. Then strain everything out and press on the stuff left in the strainer to really push all of that vinegar out. Now chop up 3 sticks or 330 grams of butter, and then put it into your refrigerator. Yes, my friends, you heard that correctly. That is almost a full pound of butter. But it's important to remember that you're going to be eating a very small amount of the sauce. The reason why I haven't scaled this down is that this style of sauce becomes much harder to not break in smaller quantities. So given that for me at least, this is probably a once-in-a-year cook, I just go for the full batch and either make it for friends or accept that I won't be eating nearly all of it. Pour the vinegar reduction into a saucepan with 4 egg yolks, and then turn your burner onto medium heat. If you keep the pan on the burner the whole time, the sauce is going to break. So the trick is don't change the burner setting, but whisk it for 15 seconds on the heat, then move the pan to the side and whisk it for 15 seconds off the heat. Don't stop whisking and keep doing this back and forth until the sauce starts to get nice and thick. And stir in all of the cold chopped up butter. And then season it with a tablespoon of kosher salt. If it gets too cold or too hot, it will separate. So make sure to cook this one at the last minute. The only downside to this whole butter method is that the sauce isn't as thick as the more traditional Bernaise, which in restaurants you get around by using one of these soda guns and charging the sauce with nitrogen. But I really don't mind the slightly looser sauce straight out of the pan. And it also lets me add the leftover chopped up tarragon leaves, as well as some freshly ground black pepper for color and some extra flavor and texture. These sauces may not be things that I make very often, but they are undoubtedly delicious. There's a lot to be learned by cooking them. But anyway, that is all for me on this one. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.